You know how sometimes you just feel alive? And there are other times where you're kind of just messing about and you just don't feel plugged in? What's the difference? And how do we always feel like we are plugged into life? Every bit of Torah is meant to communicate to us life's lessons. One of the most powerful ones for me is the story of Yosef and his brothers. We'll deal perhaps with them another time, but one item I'd like to draw an intense focus on. Yosef is sold. His life has fallen apart. He's lost his father, he's lost his mother, he's lost his brothers, he's lost his family, and he finds himself as a slave in the house of Potiphar. With hard work, he eventually gets recognized and promoted to the top of the heap, in charge of the whole household. But very quickly, tide turns again, and he's thrown into a pit in jail. One day, the two people, the royal baker and the royal butler, walk into the cell block and they are devastated. Yosef asks them if there's anything he can do to alleviate their suffering. And the first one turns to him and says, I had a dream last night and I just can't figure out what it means, what it represents, and it's on my mind. Yosef says, I don't know maybe what it is, but perhaps God will give me the inspiration to share with you a way forward. The man tells him about the fact that he's sitting there looking at the vines of Pharaoh, 3 specific clusters on the vine. He squeezes the vines into the cup and eventually serves it to Pharaoh once again. But I don't know what it means. Joseph says the 3 clusters represent 3 days. And after those 3 days pass, you will be reinstated to your job. The royal butler is overjoyed. Hearing this, the royal baker steps in and says, well, what about me? I've had a very similar dream. My dream was about me standing there with 3 baskets on my head, and at the top basket filled with all the goodies that Pharaoh's house has to offer. Birds swooping in, eating from the top basket. Quite idyllic, actually. Yosef, unfortunately, doesn't have the same smile on his face. He says, your 3 baskets, I'm sorry to say, represent 3 days. Baker leans in. This is going good, exactly the same as his friend. And then Joseph drops the bombshell. After 3 days, the king is going to lift your head from your body and you will hang. And the birds of prey that circle overhead will eat from your body. The man is stunned. There's a very sharp question here that needs to be asked. The Talmud tells us that every dream follows its interpretation. And if one interprets their dreams for the good, then they will portend good. And God forbid the opposite, it won't turn out so well. So Joseph has in his hands the power of interpretation. And of all people in the world, Joseph more than any should understand the challenges associated with correctly or positively interpreting dreams. After all, the predicament he was in the moment was because of the way his brothers interpreted his dreams. Why does he give this man such a bad interpretation? The Dubna Maggid gives a fascinating answer by way of a story. A king offers a wonderful opportunity for all the artists of his kingdom. He asks anyone who can to come and paint their very best painting. And if their painting is exactly lifelike, then they will get a handsome reward. Painting after painting comes forward, each artist hopeful that they will win the prize, that their depiction will be completely lifelike. But person after person walks away with their hopes dashed, because the crowd each time finds something that doesn't seem exactly right. The lighting in this one, the shadows in this one, the apple in that one, the pear in the third. Each painting has something in it which is not exactly true to life, true to scale. Finally, the last painter steps forward. He's got a magnificent piece of a man standing, holding, looking at the most sumptuous, delicious-looking apple. Everyone oohs and ahs, and they can't believe that someone is so talented to have captured every lifelike detail of the apple and this human being who's holding it. No one can find anything wrong with it. The man steps forward, sure that he will get the reward. While they are standing there, a bird swoops down and tries to peck the apple in his hand. At this stage, no one has any doubt that he'll win. In fact, it was so true to form, so true to life, that the bird actually thought that he'd get a bite out of this apple. But the king shakes his finger. I'm sorry, but your painting too has fallen short. Have you ever been eating an apple, a sandwich, a cucumber, anything, and a bird comes and tries to eat it out of your hand? Birds don't do that. They're afraid of the human being who holds that item of food. So while your apple may have fooled the bird, the human being actually must not have looked real. The bird must have known that the subject, the human subject, was not alive. What Joseph tells the baker is exactly the same thing. He would have loved to give him a positive interpretation, but clearly from the fact that the bird was eating out of the baskets on his head, the bird knew that the human in that frame was not alive at all. I think there's an added message here. We search for life and understanding what it is that makes us feel alive. For some people, it's amassing certain amounts of stuff. For other people, it might be the pursuit of honor or power. But at the very least, what is necessary to feel alive is movement. Because a fundamental difference between the two dreams is that whereas in the first one, he's squeezing grapes, he's serving Pharaoh. He's active. He's not a passive journey in this dreamscape built around him. Whereas the baker is just standing there, letting life flit in and out of the focus of his lens. This idea is very powerful. Everybody here will have met someone who lives life in a perhaps depressed or sad state. And the vicious cycle that wraps around is that the more upset they are at life, the less that they do. They crawl up in their bed in perhaps a fetal position, covering themselves, not wishing to engage with the world. But the feeling of life, the flowing of blood through our veins is dependent on action, on us stepping into the frame and deciding that we're going to play a part in dictating what our lives will feel like. The less we are masters of our own destiny, the less alive we feel. So life is about motion. It's about the choice to engage. And if you feel a little bit lackluster, get up, get out, do something. Make sure that that thing that you're doing comes from deep within, and it's not something that was dictated to you from another part of your story, from a parent, from a coworker, from a child, from a husband, from a wife. It doesn't make a difference. Find something that you want to do. Go out and achieve it. And the minute the person experiences in their life the choice to do an action and the carrying out of that action, they bring life back into the frame.